What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with this top 10 ABA players listing. Just to do a brief recap, at number 10, I had Louis Dampier. At number 9, I had Jimmy Jones. At number 8, I had the Roger Brown. Number 7, my all-time list, I had the Horse, Dan Essel. At number 6, I had the Hawk, Connie Hawkins. At number 5, on my all-time listings, I had George McGinnis. At number 4, the A-Train, Artis Gilmore. And at number 3, I had Roger Brown. So at number 2, I have maybe a somewhat surprise pick at Rick Barry. Now, the reason why I say somewhat surprising is because he only played 3 seasons in the ABA. And he's not on the all-time team, which kind of surprises me a little bit. Because he only played 3 seasons, and in 2 of those seasons, he missed significant time due to injury. But the reason why I have him so high is because of his overwhelmingly dominant play during those 3 seasons. He should have really played 4, but because of a stupid-ass NBA rule, existing rule, he couldn't play his first year when he tried to attempt to play in the ABA. So we all know him really as an NBA player. We think of the Golden State Warriors when we hear Rick Barry. And we all know Rick Barry's personality. He was a jerk. He was a dick. He was an asshole. Nobody liked him. Like with a guy like Bill Laimbeer, for instance, right? Everybody in the NBA hated Bill Laimbeer, except for his teammates. They loved him. Well, with Rick Barry, everybody hated him, including his teammates, including coaching staff. They thought he was an arrogant, know-it-all prick, jerk. And that's largely why he has not been a part of the NBA extended family when it comes to the media. He's respected, but he's persona non grata when it comes to the actual in crowd, so to speak, of the NBA. They can't deal with him. He's so arrogant, man. But having said all of that, man, he was a great player. A great player. So how did he come to play in the ABA? Well, of course, he was drafted out of the University of Miami, Ohio, I think it was, in 1965. I believe he was Rookie of the Year. A high-scoring player. Great players. I think his rookie year was 65, 66. His second year in the NBA, he became the first player other than Wilt Chamberlain since 1959 to lead the NBA in scoring, averaging 35.6 points per game. And I've said this before. It's just, one of these trivia, answers. He has the highest scoring average ever for a Caucasian NBA player, 35.6 points per game. Led his team to the NBA Finals in 1967, but they lost in 6 to the 68-13 record Philadelphia 76ers. Now, by this time, Rick Barry, looking at his overall play, was not particularly happy with his contract. All right? He thought he was missing out on certain incentives. He wasn't getting paid what he thought he was worth. So his contract was coming to an end. So he wanted to play in the ABA. Right? His father owned, not his father. His father-in-law. His father-in-law owned. No, I don't know if they owned it. What was it? Did he own it, or was he? Was he the general manager? Let's just say he was in management. His father-in-law was in the management of an ABA team called the Oakland Oaks. I think the team was at least partially owned or owned by Pat Boone, all right, entertainer. So they're willing to pay him, I think, a fee of $500,000. $500,000 in the late '60s was a phenomenal amount of money. You know, even great players at that time weren't making that type of money quite yet. So he wanted to play for the Oakland Oaks, but there was this stupid reserve clause that stated that either he had the choice of, because they still owned his rights for like another year or something, some clause rule, he either had to play for the Golden State Warriors for 67, 68, or he had to sit out an entire year. So he chose, because he wanted that money, he chose to sit out the entire 1967-68 season. He didn't play any professional basketball. So he played for the Oakland Oaks in 68-69, and that year he averaged 34 points per game, 9.4 rebounds, 3.9 assists, and he led the ABA in free throw percentage. But he only played 35 games for the Oakland Oaks until he suffered an injury. He didn't play in the playoffs. But without Rick Barry, that team was so loaded and so talented that they still won the ABA championship in 1968-69. So 1969-1970 comes. By that time, the team had moved from Oakland to Washington and became the Washington Capitals. They were the Washington Capitals for 1 year. Rick Barry was not fond of this move, all right? He did not agree to play in Washington. He was staying in Oakland, you know, or in that area. So he had to move to D.C., which is not, he wasn't particularly fond of living in that area. He said some very disparaging things about Virginians, sort of insinuating that they were country hicks. You know, I don't know why old Rick Barry would think that about us. So he wasn't particularly popular. That's the way Rick Barry did. So in 1969-1970, for the Washington Capitals, he appeared in 52 games, averaged 27.7 points per game, 7 rebounds, and 3.4 assists per contest. And that year they made it to the semifinal round before they were eliminated. I can't remember who they lost to. So after that season, he signed, I think he was traded. I'm trying to get my memory correct. The Capitals became the Virginia Squires, because it get kind of confusing. The Capitals became the Virginia Squires. He didn't want to be there, all right? So he was traded early on, I think it was off season or during the beginning part of that season. He was traded from the Virginia Squires to the New York Nets. So now, 70-71, he's a member of the New York Nets. And that year, he appeared in 59 contests, averaging 29.4 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, and 5 assists per contest, shooting 47% from the floor and 89% from the charity stripe. Now that year, they only made it to the first round, where they were eliminated by his old team, the Virginia Squires. And in 1971-72, his final year in the ABA, Rick Barry averaged 31.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 4.1 assists per contest. But he did appear in 80 games. And that year, they made it all the way to the ABA Finals, where they lost to the eventual champion Pacers. I think it was a series that went 6 games. Now, as far as some of Rick Barry's accomplishments as an ABA player, until Steph Curry and Jason Tatum did it this past season, He was the first and only player to score 50 points in a Game 7. No one had done it in either league until Steph Curry and Jason Tatum did this year. I think I've already said this before. If I haven't said this already, Rick Barry holds the record for highest scoring average in the ABA, 30.5 points per game during the regular season, 33.5 points per game during the playoffs. These are all ABA records. And during the 1969-70 postseason, I think it is, he averaged greater than 40 points per game. Now, after 1972, Rick Barry had a desire to continue playing. I'm trying to remember the details, what happened. I think the courts ruled, if I remember correctly, that the courts ruled that the Warriors still owned his rights, right? They said, well, we ruled that the Warriors still own your rights, so you shouldn't be playing in the ABA. So he had a choice of either sitting down a year again and then coming back to playing for the Nets in the 73-74 season, I think it was, or just immediately playing for the Warriors. This time he didn't want to waste another year, waste money, so he went right back to the NBA. But one thing that this version of Rick Barry had going for him was, look, in the early years of the ABA, I'll get to that in a moment. The early years of the ABA, they couldn't compete with the NBA. By the time Rick Barry left to go back to the NBA, the ABA was a lot more talented. And one of the things that I think the ABA had an advantage over the NBA was their perimeter players, the guard play. Now, the NBA had a big advantage when it came to big men. But the guard play in the ABA was a lot more superior, and I think the ABA was a lot more athletic overall than the NBA. And what happened with Rick Barry was, because of the pace of the game, it was even faster paced than the NBA. He lost a little bit of weight, which added to his quickness. He improved his ball handling ability. His playmaking went way up, and his defense got better. So he was a better player when he came back to the Warriors in 1972 than he had been when he left in 1967. So that's Rick Barry, man. Rick Barry, as far as accolades are concerned, let's look at it. He's an ABA champion. Let's look at it right quick. He's an ABA champion with the Oakland Oaks. He won a scoring title in the ABA. And he was a 4-time ABA All-Star, 4 times All-ABA First Team. And he appeared in another ABA Finals with the with Rick Barry. You got to do some thinking because he played so many different teams. He won an ABA championship with the Oakland Oaks, and he appeared in the ABA Finals with the then New York Nets. And you do have to wonder what could have been had Rick Barry stayed with the Nets. Could they have formed a little bit of a dynasty? Maybe. But anyway, that's my number 2 guy, man, Rick Barry. Tell me what you guys think.